Well, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker for the day is Jenielyn. She is the Director of E-Learning Integration at Cypher Learning and a passionate educator with over 20 years of experience in the field. In 2010, Jen graduated from the Technological University of Philippines with master's degree in management. In 2011, Jen joined the Center of Innovative Learning Programs of DLSU as the Virtual Learning Environment Coordinator. Let's go ahead, bring her on board.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Assalamualaikum. Good afternoon. I'm happy to be here. This is such a great opportunity, as always, to be in the presence of amazing educators globally and to be able to share with you some insights on how we can leverage on e-learning and to build a disaster-proof education. I will also be sharing with you some personal experiences on how I embraced e-learning and how it helps support the disaster-proof education advocacy that I have, and also on how it helped most of the schools that I have engaged with and school where I teach make their education disaster-proof. I'm coming from a country that happens to be a favorite pit stop of calamities and natural disaster. So I will also try and share with you some key aspects that will help us get started in building a disaster-proof education that may also be applicable in your institution. So let's just get this started. Okay, so the discussion will also focus on continuous learning, despite the natural disturbances that we are experiencing. I know that all of us, we all had our fair share on how the pandemic affected us all. Really, truly, as what my slide says, year 2020, the struggle is real. Um, I know that it's been almost a year since we experienced this extraordinary phenomenon, I'd like to call it that, that has greatly impacted the education sector globally. And I know most, if not all of us, are still in the process of taking it all in and trying to wrap our head around what had happened in the past year. We are probably still adjusting to teaching remotely and teaching with a heavy use of technology or doing e-learning for that matter amidst the pandemic or amidst this disaster. But one thing is I know for sure, as educators, you and I, or all of us here, we will always try to find a way to bring education to our learners in whatever ways and means possible. That's how passionate we are as educators. And e-learning is one of those ways by which we can do that. I wouldn't really say that e-learning is something new though, because e-learning has been there for a long time. Probably we just didn't pay too much attention to it before because we haven't really felt the need until COVID happened. We woke up one day and um, most of the government would say, "Hey, don't we are not going to school anymore because there's a threat to our health. There's a threat to our lives." So this situation is actually bittersweet for me as an advocate of disaster-proof education. I've been advocating for a disaster-proof education for several years now, and only when COVID happened have I seen how much education institution globally put so much attention to technology integration in the classroom, let alone e-learning. This is also probably the reason why there are a lot of schools and educators who had a difficult time adjusting to what they call the new normal of teaching. But like what I have mentioned, this is really nothing new. E-learning has been in existence even before COVID. We just probably didn't pay too much attention to it. But it's not too late. It's never too late. I'm sure we have learned a lot in the past months or year, and there are still a lot of opportunities for us to learn more and adjust to the way that we teach and adjust the way that we deliver our lessons so that our students will keep on learning. And as I mentioned, I am also an educator, like most of you are here. And facing disasters and calamities is nothing new to me. I live in a country, as mentioned, I live in the Philippines, and Philippines is one of the most calamity and I would say disaster-prone countries in the world. Uh, we have typhoons almost 20 times a year. Yesterday, we had a strong typhoon that came in. I was so scared that I would lose internet connectivity, but it's good that I have the connectivity now, and we have power. So we have typhoons 20 times a year. Uh, that's more than the number of months in the calendar. We experience earthquake, volcanic eruption, monsoon rain, flood, name it. We probably have it. the natural calamities and when they strike, it results to cancellation of classes most of the time. And that's what I have as an experience as an educator who lives in a country where we have a lot of calamities happening. So when classes are suspended, schools here especially are required to make up for the lost instruction time with extra school days for students. So that means extra school days for our students. And it happens more often than not, it happens on weekends or Saturdays. That's the case in the Philippines, which this weekends is supposed to be spent in with a family. So and the challenges of doing all of this makeup classes actually, as we have experienced it here, for one, is rescheduling itself. The teachers must organize a common schedule in which all students affected by class cancellation can be gathered to attend makeup classes. Once a common schedule is found, the next hurdle is finding a vacant classroom, then getting everyone to attend, then getting the students to stay engaged because they will be thinking, oh, this is just a makeup class. I don't have the energy to attend. Why am I here? I shouldn't be in this makeup class at all. And now more than ever, we're not just seeing, but we're actually experiencing how the education process is disrupted and brought to a standstill in many countries right now. But instead of probably pressing that panic button, there's always a better solution to this. And we just have to keep in mind that despite the pandemic, our goals remain as educators. We want our students to be future and work ready. We want our students to continuously learn. We want to keep developing their skills. And talking about student skills, please allow me to share with you some of the most sought after employability skills that companies will be looking for a candidate for a job. For example, communication skills, analytical skills, technology skills, etc. Uh, we also have these standards for students from ISTE. ISTE. We want our students to be empowered learners. We want them to be digital citizens. We want them to be knowledge constructors. So there's just so many skills that we want our students to still develop. These are future ready skills uh, that we now are probably wondering, how can we develop among our learners these future ready skills that Jen is mentioning if we're not inside the classroom? Or when classes just keeps getting suspended or canceled, or when we have to do remote learning, we're not really getting them to be engaged or all of those stuffs. The answer is we need to start thinking of creating a disaster proof education. This is why we need to start thinking of that. I have been advocating for this, as mentioned, for a long time now. um, Disaster-proof education is a proactive measure, actually, that makes teaching and learning continuous amidst the calamity, whether that's natural or man-made, because we know that in some areas it's not just the natural calamities that's stopping education from happening. There are other aspects and factors. It's also a measure that avoids taking extra days for makeup classes for our learners so that they can spend more time with their family. And the way we can do that, one of the many ways by which we can do that, we need to start embracing e-learning. I know that we've already started this, but we need to embrace e-learning more. This is a key aspect, a key critical aspect for us to be able to uh, continuously teach and learn and start building disaster-proof education. E-learning comes in many different definitions. I know that for sure all of us here knows that already, and we have been doing this in the past year. If we haven't been done, if we haven't done that before, now we're doing it. It comes in many different definitions. Other would say basically electronic learning or learning digitally. And now there are a lot of flavors of e-learning compared to before. Uh, how we experience it, e-learning before, where teachers would literally save into a physical storage like USB or CD the learning materials and have the learner take it home to either watch or read what's in that physical storage in their own devices at home. And e-learning comes with great importance. And just to share with you, or probably let's look back, let's try to look at those important aspects of e-learning that we all already know, just to refresh our memories. So for one, it's student-centered. It's more focused on the needs of the learner, how they will learn, how they will access the learning materials. Accessibility is another. With internet and proper devices or any devices, learners can get access to the learning content that's intended for them. It allows them to learn anytime, anywhere. No need to be in the physical classroom all the time just to be able to join activities. It's also cost effective, paperless, less travel, less electricity if you're in school. In the school where I teach, you know, our school has saved millions of pesos for just by doing e-learning. Through e-learning, learning can also be more personalized and more customized to the needs of the learners using, different automation rules of the digital tools that you're using. So it can also be inclusive, since there are a lot of digital tools for e-learning now that also caters to uh, learners with different needs. And it can also support differentiated instruction and adaptive learning. So these are just some of the importance of e-learning and many more. And not only that, in the industry trends nowadays, even nowadays, even in the companies, more companies are now also engaging in e-learning. E-learning helps prepare our learners for the future workplace. There are now a lot of companies doing e-learning for employee engagement, e-training, gamification, or mobile learning. So that's kind of like the new trend now. And you're probably asking, Jen, with all of the things that you're saying, how do we start? How do we get started in utilizing e-learning to start building our own disaster-proof education? Well, let me share with you a simple formula that I have learned over the years. First, let's start with a PI. So PI stands for plan, implement, evaluate. So planning is very important. The first aspect is planning. We need to consider the following in planning: the objectives, the school's capability, the students, the teachers, and the barriers. So we need to have a clear goal in mind. What are we trying to achieve? What are your school's capability? Assess the school's capability. Also, identify the barriers and constraints. Get to know your learners. Look at teachers' readiness. Have a capacity building for teachers on the use of technology and e-learning along with the pedagogy and content. So after planning, you need to implement, and these are the things that we need to consider in implementation: the content, availability of content, using the right tool, the instructional design, and choosing the right learning activity. Let me share that with you. For example, in content availability, we have to make sure that your content is available to the students in the digital platform that you're using anytime, anywhere. It also helps when your content aligns with your technology and your pedagogy. For example, if you're offering blended learning, you need to have an LMS to support this type of instruction, or e-learning for that matter. That's very important. You also need to use the right tools. Have a look at the digital tools that you are already using and evaluate their potential to be used for e-learning, such as your school's learning management system. And you know that there are a lot of available digital tools already that can supplement e-learning even in the worst case scenario. Learning management system for one. So it allows teachers to create and deliver content that can easily be accessed by the learners. It also allows you to monitor student engagement, participation, assess their knowledge, even if you're not inside the four walls of our classroom. And here are some of the suggested guide that I can share with you when you're choosing a digital tool. First is, ask yourself, is it easy to implement? Does it offer free trial? Does it provide or offer support and assistance to users? And then ask yourself also, what do you need and what are you trying to achieve? Does the tool possess the feature that you're looking for or want to have? What are the technological constraints and barriers between the users and the schools and the tools that you want to use? So these are some of the questions that you might want to ask yourselves when you're choosing a digital tool. And then also choose the right learning activities. This is very important. Learning will be virtual. Learning can be remote as well. And you want to make sure that the platform that you're using for e-learning and its features supports all of these activities. let me share with you some recommended virtual activities that you can, use for when you're doing e-learning. So you can do discussion forums, you can do debates, you can use an activity called Wiki. You can have online and group activities that still promotes collaboration among learners, even if they're not together in the same classroom. So this makes e-learning fun and engaging. Uh, Engagement is very important. So you can also do online exams as needed. Web conferencing, group chat, online free-form assessments, gamification, and competency-based learning. So these are just a few of those activities that you can actually do in your classroom when you're doing e-learning, just to make learning more engaging and more fun. Since we're not there in the classroom with our students to try to get their attention. Instead, and then another aspect is instructional design. That's part of the implementation. Design your instruction based on the needs and learning requirements of the learner. Be concise, be precise, make it easy to understand. The sessions must also be planned. The sequencing, you need to take that into consideration. That's part of instructional design. Also, lastly, part of the pie, evaluate. After you've implement uh, your e-learning, evaluate for success. And I have three keywords for you: guide, monitor, adjust. Guide everyone, okay, all of the stakeholders, parents on what to do. Okay, be there for them, motivate them, support them. That's very important. Monitoring is also another part. Monitoring, not policing. Just to clarify, you need to keep track of progress of all of the participants in e-learning, the learners, the teachers, even probably parents if they're also enrolled in some courses. You need to develop appropriate evaluation tools just to know what needs to be adjusted. An effective feedback system is also very important. If you can create a help desk, an online help desk to support everyone that's involved in e-learning, that's even better because it's going to help them a whole lot. I'm telling you, based on my experience, right? And then, of course, adjust. Adjust as needed. Do not be afraid to change something if you think that the first implementation it's not working. Make the necessary improvement. Upgrade, innovate, create. That's very important. Outside of the box thinking, or probably just remove the box, as they say it these days. Remove the box. Have a growth mindset. That's also very important. It's important for us to make all of those adjustments. Those are the things that we need to do to evaluate. Again, guide, monitor, and adjust. So I always believe that the perfect formula for a disaster-proof education is having the right tool, plus the right pedagogy and the right strategy. That would be the perfect formula for disaster-proof education. And I would also like to share with you some practical tips that you can. When the pandemic happened, just a little bit of a background in this e-learning practical tips. When the lockdown started last year, and I saw a lot of concerns and comments, and probably I would say complaints from teachers, from students on what's happening about remote learning. I came up with a series of practical tips. I actually have 10, but I will share just half of it to you. You can find some of it in social media where I post it. But these are some of the practical tips that I have for e-learning. I call it disaster-proof e-learning practical tips by Teacher Jen. First is tip number one: have an asynchronous session. Do a synchronous session. Online learning does not have to always be synchronously done, because there's just so many things that we have to consider. So have an asynchronous mindset. That's very, very important. Second, do not overwhelm your students with too many online assignments and activities, because that will also in return overwhelm us with all of the things that we need to check. So there should be balance. Third is don't panic. Okay, upload lessons and activities one at a time. And then, of course, sharing is caring. Share lessons and activities that are common to teachers so that you don't have to redo everything. And then help each other. Have an open line of communication where teachers and students can communicate with each other and just help each other out. And then lastly, I'd like to share this with you. Disaster-proof education for everyone. Building a disaster-proof education can be challenging, but it can be done if we prepare and if we embrace the growth mindset. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I hope that you learned something. That's the last slide for my presentation. Okay, I think we're ready for some questions. Let me just go over the chat here and read some questions. Okay, first question. Should we be concerned that as the world becomes more decentralized and dependent on technology, would this lead to higher risk of unmanageable failures? Oh, wow, that's kind of like, well, I really think it depends. That's why planning is very important. You know, and I get you. I understand this question. I saw a lot of probably or I've heard a lot of concerns about technology, kind of like, are we going to lose our job because of technology? Is there a risk of more health risk of technology? Well, nothing is certain, that's for sure. But I believe that with proper planning, the unimaginable failures can be lessened or can be avoided. So it's just all about planning and having that forward thinking on what might happen, and then have a contingency plan A, plan B, plan C, so that all of those unimaginable or unmanageable failures that we're thinking we might encounter, even if they're not here yet, we are already planning on how we can control them, on how we can uh, probably manage them in the future. All right, so another question here. What are the current challenges faced by school educational system in terms of switching between technologies and upgrading? Well, I believe that this depends on the school from one country to another, because there are a lot of things that schools has to consider. There are schools in different countries where they will face challenges on devices. They will also face challenges on the technology itself, the lack of access to technology, the lack of access to the device of the learner. But there are also concerns on changing the curriculum, how to integrate curriculum, how to integrate technology in their curriculum, which they haven't done before. Some of them are just doing this now, so it's a bit challenging for them. Okay, another question: Does digitalization will have an impact on kids' interpersonal skills and social skills? If so, how do we overcome the hurdle? This is really like a question that's always being asked. I would say there is positive impact. If you're asking about the not so positive impact, probably. Uh, and that will happen if we don't know how to regulate this stops. So a lot of people are thinking that when you're doing e-learning or when you're learning digitally, it affects the way that we um, socialize, or the way that we uh, it affects our interpersonal skills, because we don't get to see uh, in person. Okay, but like what I mentioned, there are a lot of activities that we can still do virtually that will promote collaboration, that will still promote students' engagement, where they can still talk to their friends and classmates, even if it's happening online. But this is also personal take on this question. Once everything is back to the way, I would say when there's no more pandemic, no more threat to our health, I would always say that doing blended learning is the best way to go, so that it's not always that we see each other in a digital world, but there will still be the component of students seeing each other face to face, because human interaction on a face to face scenario or situation is still the best way to socialize and to develop our interpersonal skills. Next question. Oh, we still have time for questions. What are the current challenges faced by developing countries when it comes to sharing top learning content through digitization? I can only speak for those that I have experienced, countries that I've seen, and also in my own country. The current challenge that we're actually facing when it comes to this is really the access to the device itself. Okay, it's not all our learners or teachers would have access to digital devices where content can be accessed and shared. So that's the number one challenge that I'm seeing. It's the digital divide. It's the and also connectivity. That's also one of the challenges that probably developing countries will be facing if they need to access um, content online. But what's good about that is there are already technologies available offline that will have you access all of this content and share all of this content offline. There are already an LMS that's able to do that. So that's one way of probably fixing that challenge or combating that challenge. So, but yeah, the challenge would probably be number one, accessibility to the device and connectivity. Yeah, do we have any more questions? All right. So thank you very much, everyone, for being with me today. It's such a great pleasure to be sharing this with you. I really hope that you've learned a lot today with this discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
It was a pleasure having you on our platform. Thank you for coming and sharing insights. I'm sure everybody is delighted to have you on board and to listen to your session. Thank you so much once again.